I just finished reading Agatha Christie's Halloween Party, and throughout the entire thing, I was thinking to myself, like, wow, Death on the Nile was so much better. I suppose this is what always happens whenever I read an Agatha Christie novel. This happened when like I read like And Then There Were None, which was the greatest mystery novel I think I've ever read. Like I've every time I get into these books, I read one, it's like the greatest thing ever, and then I read a couple more, and it's just like there's this weird decline in quality, in between releases. I don't know if she declined in her later years or what. I don't think I've like read enough of her to like really make that decision, but like it's kind of shocking, seeing just how much better Death on the Nile is than Halloween Party. Halloween Party's like core gimmick of like, ooh, the girl saw a murder. Like, they don't emphasize the she does not do a good job, like building up the setting, building up the characters, building up the idea. The ending feels kind of contrived. It feels kind of forced. Like there's no real build up to it. Like there's no logical sense of progression. With like Death on the Nile, what you get instead is this like amazingly elaborate, intricate plot with like these really memorable, amazing characters with their own motivations, backstories, roles in the plot. A lot of whom are keeping like dirty secrets of their own. It's an amazing read from start to finish for sure. Like definitely I would say like second best only to like And Then There Were None, right? Like I loved Death in the Nile, right? Halloween Party in comparison, like, there are things I liked about it. The villain was kind of interesting, like his motivations, like stuff like that. But like as a whole, it's so plotting and boring. Like as a whole, it's just not like it doesn't have the same spark, that made Death on the Nile so memorable. And I think like an iconic classic of the genre. Like to me, like reading these books back to back, it just really, really emphasizes both Agatha Christie's like strengths and weaknesses as a creator, right? Like for Death on the Nile, I suppose like everything came together where she had like an interesting idea, she had a unique setup, she came up with all these great characters that all like bounced off each other really well, were really, really memorable and interesting. And in Halloween Party, you have the exact opposite of characters that don't really seem to have a lot, like a really like it's crazy. In Death on the Nile, like none of the characters really know each other all that well. Well, most of them don't. Most of them don't know each other that well, but they feel so much more like alive and interacting with each other and having like real interpersonal like relationships and stuff like that. With like Halloween Party, it feels like weirdly detached. It just feels very, very removed. Like everything just feels very, very removed from uh from everything else, to the point where like like the protagonist is just going around asking people like, do you think the girl was a liar, was lying when she said that like she saw a murder, like, and he does this for like legit, like I want to say like 150 pages, like about like two-thirds of the book, right? Over two-thirds of the book, right? Like he does this like, oh, do you think she was lying, and everyone tells him yes. So like again, like the the idea behind the book is interesting in this sense, where like this idea that like the girl was lying, but the question is what she was lying about. That's kind of the issue with Halloween Party in this sense, where like you have this very logical like progression, this setup, like this thing, like the core hook of the story, and like the entire thing is botched, so much so that it just becomes like completely uninteresting. Like you don't care about anything that's happening. It's crazy. Like as opposed to like Death on the Nile, where you just have like so many interesting characters and so many things going on and so many revelations and like ongoing murders, and just it's just so good in comparison. Like one of the things about like Death on the Nile that really, really stuck out to me as a reader was just like how well realized the cast was. Like they all just feel like actual people with actual backgrounds, with actual like personality. Like they felt like real characters. Like they felt fun, they felt engaging, they felt like they served a purpose in the story. There were so many red herrings and just like just an incredible set. Like it was so good, and then like Halloween Party just, ugh, I don't know. It's very frustrating when like a creator who can do better than this like misses the mark in this way. I suppose it happens to all of us. But like from my perspective, it's like it, I was thinking about this when I was reading this. Like, is it worse when it happens to a mystery writer? Right? Because like these are supposed to be like really elaborate, intricate, well thought out plots, and yet like somehow they're not like when they're not interesting, it's like it's worse than if the book is just plain bad. Because like you can like read bad books and get like a thrill out of them sometimes, and how like at just how trashy they are. Like there is no redeeming a bad Mr. Dumb, I think. So I feel as if like Death of the Nile really is something special, something that really should be celebrated and acknowledged as one of the greats. But Halloween Party, I've done like some looking into this. By that I mean I googled it, and apparently it is one of the more disliked novels in our portfolio. So, or bibliography, I should say. Like, I can see why. Like, I definitely don't feel as if like this really had anything of value going for it. It's just one of those things. Like you really are better off just not reading it at all. And then meanwhile, you have like stuff like Death of the Nile, and Then There Were None, which I would say are absolute must reads for fans of the genre. I'm picking up like Murder on the Orient Express after tomorrow. That's probably gonna be I've heard that that's one of the best ones. So we'll have to see if that one holds up. But like I'm a big fan of the novels. I'm a big fan of like what I'm reading and like what I'm getting into, and it's just like it's just such a bummer when like this kind of thing happens. It's so frustrating reading a book and realizing that you actually kind of detest it. Like there could have been there was such like potential here with Halloween Party, and unfortunately, Agatha Christie missed the mark.